Hey, what's up, friends? Ray with Docket Timberworks. We have got a fun project today. We are going to take a log of firewood and we are going to turn it into a natural edge bowl. So make sure to follow along and stick around as we take an ordinary piece of red oak and transform it into a functional, beautiful piece of art. Thanks, friends. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm kind of aligning the log so that like I said, it's only been down for less than a week, but it's already got some checking in it. And I'm lining that checking up so it's vertical, so it's easy for me to cut it along it. And what I'll do is I'll put a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch mark along either side of that pith so that I get all of that checking out. And then what I'm left with is an 1.5 to 2 inch quarter sawn board that's really stable wood and makes cool projects. So this is the way to cut your logs in half. This is a side grain cut. This is a ripping cut. A lot of guys call this noodling. This is easy on you. This is easy on your saw. The mistake a lot of guys will make is to go down vertically through the end grain, and that's tough on an underpowered saw, and if you don't have the right chain set up for it. So, and if you see, I also left an inch down at the bottom. I call that holding wood, and that keeps the log together until I make my second cut. If you don't, then you're struggling trying to keep, a half log vertical and stable. So with this second cut, I'll go ahead and just cut through. And now that it's stable, I'll go ahead and finish this cut. Okay, now what I have here is the quarter sawn board. And what I'll do is I'll take that to my bandsaw and I'll cut alongside that pith again in 2 more cuts. And then I'll have 2 quarter sawn boards that are perfect for making spatulas or other stuff out of. Not too exciting. Not too exciting at all. Alright, so we're over here at my 14-inch Rikon bandsaw, and you'll notice I'm cutting it with the flat surface down on the table. You don't want to be trying to cut round objects. That saw has an amazing amount of torque and power and will rip that log right out of your hand. And then you'll also notice my position is off to the side, so I'm not in line with the blade, and the motion is more of a rotational than pushing through straight. These bandsaws are easy to hurt yourself with, so you've got to really pay attention and keep yourself out of the line of fire with that blade. And then I just have a simple plywood circle cutout on top to give myself a good guide. It doesn't have to be perfect. Our lathe is going to make everything round. This just gets us in the ballpark and lets us start out at decent RPMs. And then I don't have a foot brake on the saw, so I slow it down with a couple little pieces of wood. All right, this move here would probably get me kicked out of every guild in England and half the clubs in the AAW. Yeah, I'm using my skew as a chisel, and I'm pounding on it with a mallet. But it's all right. It's just a Harbor Freight chisel or skew, you know what I mean? But it gets the job done. I actually need to get a set of chisels, so I don't do that. And then I'm just refining center, kind of eyeballing it so that I can get a decent mounting surface. And then I'm using my spike drive. This thing's awesome for starting live edge projects because it's got 1 large locating spike in the middle and then 3 spike drives on the outside. And it really does well with uneven surfaces. And man, I roughed this entire bowl out and didn't get a single spin out on it. So I love that spike drive. Can't say enough about it. All right, everything looks good to go. We'll tighten everything up. One of the more important things to do is once you got everything, your quill tightened up, is to tighten up your quill lock, or that thing will start walking out on you, and then you could lose your piece. Mine has a real good audible cue. You know, you can hear the vibration and the movement or the slop of the cue or the quill kind of walking around in the tailstock if it's not tightened up properly. Okay, and I've got my Crown Tools David Ellsworth Signature 5/8 bowl gouge. This is a good go-to tool for greenwood turning. It's got the long wing on there. I kept a 60-degree nose angle, and that 60-degree nose angle is good for turning greenwood. It's not sharp, but what it does is it lets you walk across the bottom a lot easier than, say, a 40-degree. So and the long wing really lets you hog out material. And so I'm kind of going a little bit conservative of what I would normally call hogging out on the outside, because this is a live edge bowl. And I'm making a conscious effort to keep the bark intact. I'm really trying to stay away from the top third of the bowl in this direction of cuts, because I do not want to peel the bark off. So see, you'll see me here switching direction, and I'm coming in. I'd rather go against the unsupported grain and go into the supported bark than go against the unsupported bark and have it peel off, because then this bowl's pretty much worthless if you lose the bark. I mean, you could salvage it with a natural edge and you'd have to go and rip all the bark off, but they look really cool and they're good eye-catching pieces if you can keep the bark on. So these cuts here are basically to get the bowl true and round. I'm not worried about joining them together or having a smooth surface yet. I'm just getting everything trued up and round. And now this bowl has a pretty cool backstory. I'm doing it as a favor to a couple where I got this wood from. My tree trimming buddy, John, called me out and said, "Hey man, I'm taking down a tree with a couple of burls on it. You can come cut these burls off if you want. If I have to cut on them, I'm going to charge you." So, you know, I ran out there and harvested the burls off the tree while he was cutting it down. And the homeowners started talking to me. They're like, "Who are you?" And this. And I was like, "Oh, I'm here for the burls. I'm a wood turner." And they're like, "Oh, that's cool." And I was like, "Yeah, I make bowls out of stuff." And, you know, the wife was really interested and wanted a bowl. And so she kind of hinted, and I just offered. I was like, "Hey, you want a bowl out of your tree? Kind of like a sentimental thing." And she got all excited about it. So I figured I'd try and knock one out of the park and give her a nice live edge bowl, because that is, at my craft show tables, the first thing just about every woman picks up is one of my live edge bowls. They are drawn to them like moss to flame. I mean, I don't want to sound, kind of derogatory or anything, but I mean, it's like pumpkin spice, man. The live edge just really draws them in. So, I'm spoiler alert, I kind of nailed this bowl, and I almost didn't want to give it to her because it came out so good. But I told her I would, so, like I'll probably, do way better off with the burls that I harvested. But I mean, still, man, I really like this bowl. I'm going to miss this one. But what I'm doing right here is I've got the rough shape that I want, and I'm applying thin CA, I'm flooding it through the bark and the cambium layer. And so the bark is that green outer dry layer, and the cambium is that kind of orangish looking color. And then, you've got the sapwood and then the heartwood. So I'm really flooding it, and especially into that cambium, because it's kind of spongy like material. And this is to help keep the bark on. It's like a fail safe or a precautionary method. There I'm touching up my tool and flattening out the bottom so that I can get ready for making the tenon. I really don't get the full contour and shape until I have the tenon formed. And then I know what I'm working with bottom wise and can blend the bottom of the bowl to the top of the bowl. And that, I almost lost it right there. You see that? I kind of ran the the quill out the wrong way and it loosened up a little bit. Don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so these are real light and ginger cuts coming in, and it's difficult. This, if you haven't done a live edge bowl, the problem with live edge is you've got a large air gap between the two high points and the two low points. And so what happens subconsciously is after your tool passes through the wood, slight pressure is applied during the air gap, and then when the other wing comes around, you're in too deep and you take a good gouge out of it. And so you'll see a bunch of tool marks across your wings, and you'll get really bad ingrained tear out in these areas also. So that you really got to come in light for your finishing cuts on those wings up at the top. And so now I'm just kind of blending the bottom together. This is a pull cut, but it's more of a scrape than a hogging material. And I'm just rounding everything out, getting a good look for the bowl, getting a good shape. I'm really kind of taking my time with this one. I'm not hogging out onto it, and because I want to nail this one. It's looking good already, and I want to nail it. So now we're going to form the tenon, and I just use my dividers, and they're set to the jaws of my 4-inch jaws. I use, Technitool Nova, and start removing a little bit of material. I'll get the rough shape formed with my bowl gouge, but like I said, this is a 60-degree bowl gouge, and it's kind of difficult to get the 11-degree inward dovetails. So I'll swap here to my spindle gouge shortly, and I spend a lot of time on my tenons because I want them perfect. I want them as near perfect as possible. And now I know this isn't the best angle, so you can't really see the tool. But what you can do is you can watch the top of the tenon, and you can see the material being removed, and you can see what passes I'm doing. It's actually, the shoulder is slightly concave inward a little bit. You can go perfectly flat or slightly concave, and that's the most important surface, is the shoulder. That's what the dovetail is, to pull the wood into the jaws, the top outer layer jaws into the shoulder. So it's critical. If you want your bolt to run true and not come out, and really to run true, you have to have a good tenon. It's like laying the foundation of a house. You have to have a good foundation. So it's one of the times I really take my time and spend a lot of effort on is my tenons. Now this probably isn't the best choice. You can hear the tool. It's a little bit grabby. I found, I go back to it a couple of times on this bowl, but that sharp 45-degree angle that I have ground on it, when I present it like a traditional scraper, it's a little bit grabby on this wet red oak. It works a lot better on dry timbers. But I like it because, you know, it's a big piece of heavy duty tool steel. Um, it's just solid. So, and it works really good on the shear scraping. It's not grabby at all when I shear scrape, as you can see by those fine little ribbons there. But it is grabby when I present it in a traditional style. And I was a little bit cautious about going out towards the edge with it. So I go back to my bull butt gouge and I'm shear scraping the horns or the wings, whatever you want to call them, the very top of the bowl. And you can see that I'm at the very top because I'm not getting ribbons because there's an air gap. There's very, you know, you can't get ribbons when it's air, wood, air, wood, air, wood. So, you know, but they're still fine little chips, and I'm just concentrating that end grain at the top because that's a miserable thing to sand if you mess it up. Yeah, I think this was a good choice because it's got really plain grain, to be honest. The grain is nothing spectacular, but that live edge, man, it really lets you see what's going on. It brings you in. And it's kind of crazy. You know, it's prominent heartwood with just a little bit of sapwood and the cambium layers, and they're really stark contrast between them all. They really, I like it, man. I like this piece a lot. I'm not gonna lie. It looks cool, man. You can really see that quarter sawn flecking in there too. It's a cool bowl, man. I like it. And see, I showed the 3 little holes there. I didn't get any spin out on it like I would normally a step drive or something. And you saw there where I always keep a strap wrench handy because sometimes these things can tighten up on you. My small G3 chuck has a 1-inch thread, so I have to use a spindle adapter on it, and it gets stuck sometimes, and that strap wrench is invaluable for getting that off together. And I'm using a 1/2-inch spindle gouge to try and drill a depth hole, and it's not the easiest process. I'd be better off with a 3/8. But I'm drilling a center depth hole so I have an idea of where the bottom of the bowl is. And, you know, it's a slow process because it's too wide. It's not taking out material fast. And I have to constantly stop and measure and stop and measure. So there's better ways to go about doing this. But I'm not going to take it out. It is what it is. So now we come to my favorite part, hollowing bowls. I just love hollowing bowls. And I'm going a different route than I normally do. I normally like to just hog out the middle and work my way outwards, but I'm in my mind I want a 1/4 inch thickness on this bowl. So I'm going to experiment with leaving some center mass in and working the rim and then whittling away the center mass and then working the rim some more and going that method. If you've seen any of my other videos, I normally just hog out the middle and rip in towards the rim, and we'll hold a paper towel on the outside of the rim and to reduce the chatter in the bowl flex and clean things up. You cannot do that with a live edge. You will break your hand or your fingers. You can't be holding on the outside of the bowl. That's you know, my go-to finishing process is abrasive paste. I didn't go with that either on this because, you know, it's not only is it live edge, but I like asymmetrical live edge. So one of these wings is radically higher than the other. I want to say one is like a 6.5-inch height and the other's 4-inch. So the outer edge is really off, and it's something that you don't want to be grabbing onto at 1500 RPM. All All right, so now you see me moving my tool rest a little bit closer because I'm getting quite the overhang on the tool. You know, I'm like 5 inches overhang in the wood. So, but it's critical that you test fit before you start any of these things with the live edge, because just the slightest bump and you can knock off all your bark. It'd be a real bummer. So, you know, when you go to bumping around your tool rest, you got to really be careful. And especially with the live edge, probably do it while it's stopped, you know, especially when you're at the bark area. You don't want to lose all that hard work. And I'm close. I'm real close. So you can see I'm conscious about it. You see my little pinky sticking out. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to, you know, keep a conscious, because it looks like I'm far away, you know, but the wing will get you. The wing's right there, and it's really easy to just kind of rest the palm of your hand over the tool rest, kind of the meaty portion of your hand, and get smacked. And believe it or not, you know, your hand can knock the bark off. So like I said, I'm playing with the idea of keeping the center mass in there and working the rim out. I don't normally do this, and I'm kind of, it's giving me a little bit of a problem because I'm consciously thinking about it. I've got this long Ellsworth grind with those long wings, and it's really easy to have a kind of a gnarly catch on that center mass if you're not careful. When you're coming around the corner like that, you can catch that cone that's in the middle, and then you have to work it away. The other kind of drawback of the Ellsworth grind is because it has such a blunt angle, to come out and start at the rim, you have to be way across your body and then work your way back towards center and then the other way. With the blunt angle like that, it's a long sweeping motion of the bowl gouge for the continual arc of the interior of the bowl. Whereas like a 40-40, you would just kind of push in almost straight in. It's kind of, it takes me a minute sometimes bouncing back and forth between the grinds to adjust to the differences of them. They really are. 20 degrees makes a huge difference in the technique that you use for hollowing a bowl. And then you can see where I'm like I said, I'm conscious of the edge, and you can tell that, you know, like right there, I don't have a death grip on this thing. A lot of times, you know, I use that baseball bat grip, and it looks like I got a white knuckle death grip on it. But as you can see right there, I was really only holding it between my forefinger and my thumb. It's more of downward pressure onto the tool rest than gripping it and moving it around. You know, I need to work on this. You know, it's one of my biggest things when I watch like Mark Saleh talk and do his demos from years ago. I really like watching Mark Saleh's demos from the Gwinnett woodturners down in Georgia. And he talks about, you know, all your steering is with your right hand and your body. If you're moving and pushing the tool along with your left hand, you're going to get uneven surfaces, and you're going to get tear out, and you're going to get tool marks. And he shows a lot of demonstrations where he doesn't even have his left hand on the tool. He's just, you know, pushing with his right hand. So right here, because of the overhang, I can feel it. I feel it, and I want a better tool rest. I bought this robust one, and it's a bowl one, but for whatever reason, you know, the banjo, that kind of the tower on my banjo is really high, and my bowl rest won't sit down low enough. So I was over at the grinder cleaning up the welds, cleaning up the bottom, trying to get the tool rest to sit lower. I checked 5, 6, 10 times over, making sure that it wasn't the tool post protruding through the bottom and catching on the bedways. No, it's where the weld is and the metal is preventing it from sliding all the way down. So I was kind of grinding on it and trying to get down lower. And I did not get low enough for my liking. I'm kind of having a rough time here because I'm cutting above center that I don't normally do. So I think I get sick of it right here in a minute and just switch over to a scraper. All right, and right here, I can't find my bevel. That's what's happening, and what I can see what's going on is I'm not swung out far enough over to the right, and so I'm kind of, it's unsupported. My bevel isn't riding right. And I know there's a hump right there in the shoulder at the bottom where it transitions, and I'm wanting to get rid of it. But like I said, I just wasn't swinging out far enough and getting the right angle of attack with my tool. Like right now, I'm swung out wide. This is where I needed to be earlier. Now this tool is the tool is too short, the handle's too short, and the angle is ground too much. It's ground at a 45, and it's really kind of not catching, but it's grabby. It's too aggressive, and I don't have enough control, long enough handle and a long enough steel protruding over to have proper control with it. So I quickly move on out of this. That, and it's also not good for hitting the bottom of, it's good for the bottom of the bowl, but not the shoulder and the transition. So, I mean, I'm going to move over to my big butter cutter, my butter knife, my Robert Sorby 1.5 inch bowl gouge or bowl scraper. And this is hands down one of my favorite tools. This thing has bailed me out of so many bowls and just got me through. I have it sharpened at 70 degrees, and it's a lot less grabby. You can tell by the ribbons, and it's the right tool for the job. You know, it's working right, and it can make that transition in the shoulder, and it can even come out to the rim. It's way less aggressive. So I'm glad I did this. This was the right move, was to put away that other scraper and move to this scraper. I mean, this thing's massive. The handle on it's a full, I believe, 20 inches long, and the piece of steel itself is, man, it seems like it's at least 10, 12 inches. It's a big tool, and it's great for those long overhangs where you're off the tool rest deep into a deep bowl. Like I said, this bowl, the one side of the horn, I believe is 6.5 inches. So I've got quite a bit of overhang, and you know, that's the rotational and the torquing forces are trying to push your tool down. And if it goes too far down, it's just going to grab it and rip the handle out of your hand into the rim of the bowl. It's not good. So, you know, if you're got these deep overhangs, you got to have the proper tool. You got to have a long handle, and you got to be able to lever against the power of your machine. Okay, and so I'm focusing that hump in there, and I know it's there, and I can feel it with my fingers, and so I'm just working that transition out. I want a smooth, easy transition. Uh, if I can feel a hump, it's not good enough. I want it smooth. I'm real particular about putting my name on something that's not up as high a standards as I can. So again, you saw me now with the interior hollowed. I put more CA into that bark to try and reinforce it. It's thin CA, and it penetrates into the cambium layer and into the bark and slightly into the sapwood. And I'm hoping that it will help preserve the bark for years to come as it goes through its drying process and things warp and shrink, because it's green wood. It's soft and wet, so it's going to move and it's going to shrink. I want that bark to stay on. And then this is the other problem with the live edge bowls and those wings or horns is you have to focus or spot sand. You have to get the ingrained tear out, and the easiest way to do it is with the lathe not in motion. And you just have to focus that spot, get it done, and then I'll come back and feather it back out. And then you got to do it on the interior too. You got to make sure that you got rid of your tear out and any tool marks from coming in. You don't want, I mean, you can have a perfect looking bowl and just a little bit of tear out will drive me crazy. I mean, I hate tear out, and it's visible. Whenever you post the pics on Facebook, you know, it stands out like a sore thumb, tear out. So I got it down to 5mm thickness. It's just under a 1/4 inch. It's right where I want it to be. And I was mumbling about, I thought I recorded. What I did was I hooked it up to my vacuum chuck, and now I'm reversing off the tenon. So I guess I had wanted to show you the process of using the vacuum chuck or whatever, but that's how I'm reversing my tenon off, is I've got it hooked up to a vacuum chuck. And, you know, because this thing won't fit in a coal jaws. And a jam chuck is kind of, you can do it, you have to keep the nub right there in place. And you'll see me right here, man. I'm playing dangerous games, and I'm just whittling it down. And I'm glad I had a vacuum chuck and not a jam chuck, because when I first started turning using the jam chucks, I chucked a couple of bowls, turning the tendons off, getting too aggressive with this nub down here and not leaving it alone. I mean, you can leave it to here and then use your little Japanese pull saw or a chisel and knock it off. Oscillating multi-tool would work too. And then you would just finish with your power sander. It's not a big deal. But, you know, sometimes you just get into it and you're playing with it and you're whittling it down, and then boom, whoops. Ooh, playing stupid games. Well, there's that. Okay, see, so if I would have been doing that on a jam chuck, I would have lost the bowl right there. It would have took off. So, like I said, you know, and I'm lucky also that I didn't get a bunch of torn out grain deep into the bottom of the bowl, and that could have affected, you know, the finish. So I lucked out on that one, got lucky. So cleaning it up with a bowl gouge, and then I just do a pretty simple concave bottom. Didn't put any detail on it. This vacuum chuck, I'm still not too sure of. Anytime I get out towards the outside with any bit of pressure at all, I start to get a chatter and a flex in the chuck itself. So here I go again, man. I'm trying to scraper again, man. I can't leave it alone. but it's you can hear it. It's just too aggressive, you know. So I don't stay long with that, and I go back to more conventional more conventional tools with my bull gouge and just finish it out. You know, I've come too far on this bull, spend too much time on it to just, you know, mess it up playing around with that scraper. See, I was thinking about doing some details in there, but as you hear me getting out towards that little foot that I've got out there, you can hear the difference, and it's wanting to put in the chatter marks and flex. So I call it quits. I just try to shear scrape and get a clean surface, and then move on to sanding. I don't want to mess it up or put in some deep gouges that I have to eventually fix. So this is pretty much the end of it. You know, I appreciate y'all for sticking around. It's kind of a long-winded one, but I think it turned out absolutely gorgeous. You know, I got the little concave area in there, and then I just do some sanding under power, and that's pretty much the bowl. So like I said, I appreciate y'all for sticking around. It's kind of long-winded, but these ones take a long time. A lot of delicate finishing cuts, you know, and but the payoff is there. I mean, they're kind of a stunning piece, and everybody gravitates towards them. They're real eye catchers, especially if you do a really good job on them. So, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate all y'all support in the comment section. Let me know what y'all thinking. Please give me a like and subscribe for more content. I'm trying to grow the channel and get it out there. 95% of my watch time is from non-subscribers. So if y'all could just help me out and hit the subscribe button, it'd be a solid. Thanks, friends. I'll leave a little bit of still photo gallery here at the end to showcase the bowl. Once it's got a little bit of oil on it, you can really see the grain pop. Y'all have a good one.